You're listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
What's up, everyone? You're listening to episode 19 of the Leafs Nation Radio podcast. We made it to 19 episodes. Nick, Scott, Michael, Caroline here with you. Kyle is unable to be with us. We miss him. We'll see him next week. But right now, guys, big snowstorm in Ontario. I'm finally in a position where I can say I'm no longer in minus 40 weather, but you guys got a snowstorm from hell.
Well, what can we say about the snowstorm that hasn't been said already? What was it, 40 to 60 centimeters of snow? But I think the biggest talking point is Doug Ford using like a tiny little shovel to try and clear some path for someone.
I heard that like Sid Seixeiro went on a rant about Doug Ford. I have yet to watch all of that, but never a dull moment back in the GTA, huh?
Yeah. I don't know. Like, apparently it's a record. Like, we broke a record for the most snowfall since like 1940 or 1960, which is nuts. Yeah, I mean, Doug Ford.
Is that just in the GTA?
I think so. I think Toronto. But I'm not sure.
I was gonna say, because I've definitely experienced worse coming from a small town in Ontario, but yeah. I will say, so to those that are watching the YouTube video, this door right here, it goes to our back porch. I have not opened it because I'm afraid of how much snow might just like come falling. I don't even know what it's actually like because I haven't left the house since the snowfall on Monday.
So DVP was closed. The Gardner was closed.
Yep.
I saw a couple of videos on TikTok about like the area in Dufferin, all these buses being stuck. Is everything up and running today? Because normally that's hey.
No, this morning when I took my dog out for a walk, I had to help push somebody out because they were stuck.
No, what a nightmare. This is like days like these have to be work from home days. I mean, they've got to be.
I was so excited because I thought it was just going to be like a nice snow day, you know, my first time in the city and it has a nice snow and I can walk my dog. And then I wake up yesterday morning and it's like 2 feet of snow and like my feet go right in and I'm like, no, this is nothing. I don't like it at all.
What was your dog's response? Does he like the snow?
He likes the snow a lot. He likes, like today, right before the podcast, like I took him out and he was like, he likes to roll around in it and put his head all in it. So cute. But he doesn't like the salt, so we got to get him some booties.
Well, the one thing I'll say here in Edmonton is the minus 40 is gone, but I've never seen anything like this where my entire neighborhood is like a skating rink. You can't walk on the sidewalk. You can't walk on the roads. It's like a massive skating rink. And I don't know if people here don't believe in putting salt on the roads. The main roads are much better than the actual neighborhoods that you go into, but I've never seen anything like it. So I don't know, pick your poison if you'd rather have snow or ice, just ready for the summer. But Nick, you like the snow. You asked for this. I feel like you manifested this for everyone in Ontario.
I didn't want this much snow. I thought I was so excited for it. And then it all came down. And then I went outside and I came back in and it was still coming down. And I'm like, okay, that's enough. And then it was still coming down even more.
Did it affect any of the Marlies or the Leafs practices that you had to go to?
No, the Marlies are I think they were in New York City yesterday. Okay. So there wasn't any of that, but the Leafs, I don't even know if they had any reporters at practice yesterday. I think there was some players that barely made it there. So I don't know. It was fun. It was funny and it was weird. And as much as I say I enjoyed it, I don't want that much snow ever again.
Okay, you guys go ahead.
Or we should have advertised ourselves as emergency backup reporters, Nick. And then we could just like take spots in like the Athletic or Sportsnet or something.
I don't even think I'd be able to get there. The Gardner was closed. Unless
I guess this is the practice facility, not the
if it was at the arena.
I don't know where it is in relation to the subway. So that's my mode of transportation here.
I believe it's I don't know. And I don't think it's close to a subway. I think it's like a 20 or 30 minute walk from a subway station, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, just find the
Okay, never
prison
mind
and then you're
Nope.
there.
Yeah, find the prison.
Not doing that.
Oh, God. I had no idea about that, Nick, until I saw your Instagram reel and it said that you would walk. I didn't even know that. And I lived in Toronto for so long.
You didn't know what? Sorry.
About the prison.
Oh yeah, that was weird. I don't like that at all. Thankfully, I don't think I'll ever have to walk by it again now, but I was thinking, like, are people going to yell at me through the windows and say, like, get me out of here? No, maybe not get me out of here, but like something like that.
Oh,
I don't know. I just did not like it.
You're so funny. Okay, let's talk about everything going on in Leafsland. Obviously, last week, 4-3 shutout win over the Golden Knights, 2-1 loss to the Yotes. Hey now, that was a nice surprise. And then a 6-5 win over the Blues. That was a nice bounce back from the boys. I wasn't able to watch the Coyotes game because I was actually working. Aside from stellar goalkeeping, 46 saves on the Knights, what for the Yotes? What went wrong for the Leafs?
Well, other six shots that they got, they weren't really high quality chances. There wasn't any like secondary chances, like rebounds was pretty much abysmal, and their power play, which as we know is usually a position of strength, was a position of weakness in this game. And coming off the second half of back-to-back where they played a pretty tough team the previous night, probably consider some energy in anticipation for that game. I just don't think they had enough energy to really like make it like hard for the Coyotes defenders. Like it's just one of those games where it's like they pretty much like didn't have to work too hard because the goalie, like once he found his groove, like the Leafs were like it was pretty much over. And just one of those games that's hockey.
Exactly.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a lot of that game was just dumb luck. Like, I mean, it felt like the Leafs were being a little bit too Harlem Globetrotters at some times with like I remember this one sequence where Travis Dermott like skated in, did like a half spin on the blue line and spun again or something like that around a Coyote to get a shot off. I'm like, I mean, like I get the team is bad, but like the game is also tied right now. So maybe wait till you're up 7-1 before you start pulling that shit.
I love it. Scott's like, stick to what you know, stick to the basics, and do that when you're winning 7-0.
I didn't get to watch really a lot of it. Like I had it on, but the Marlies game was on. The only thing that I liked from that game was the goalie's name that I cannot pronounce, but I know people on Twitter were calling him Veggie Melt.
What do I have? Velmeka? Velmeka.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced that correctly too. Veggie melt. Oh my gosh. Well, the one go ahead.
I was just gonna also add, like, I think like you could say Mrazek could have been a little bit better as well, but like you can't really fault him. Like the goals he allowed weren't all his faults. And especially the first one, that was just like the weirdest bounce I've ever seen in a hockey game. And then just like he also, I think he faced like 15 shots total in the game. Like you're not going to be super engaged in the game if you're not facing a ton of shots as a goalie. So like I can see where you would allow 2.
Yeah, how are we feeling about Peter Mrazek now? Because the last time I asked this question a few weeks ago, we said it's hard to tell right now because he just came back from injury. But do we have faith? Do we have trust in Mrazek when Jack Campbell needs a rest?
Well, we have to see him playing some more because at the end of the day, he's only played before the game on Wednesday, like 10 combined periods, and they were all sporadic throughout the entire season. The guy just simply has not been healthy. And the only way we can have full confidence is if he just gets into a rhythm, plays a bunch of games, like returns to form like he did in Carolina when he was healthy, of course. And you can go from there because like at the end of the day, we can't really judge how Mrazek is doing if we have such a small sample size. And the sample size is completely spread out throughout the entire season.
Yeah. And not just the small sample size either, but like with how spread out it is, as you said, Michael, it's hard to get a good read on him because he's always coming in super cold. Like it's hard to get that groove. Like the reason why Jack Campbell is doing so well is because he's always starting. It's the same thing with why we were always running Freddie into the ground when he was here. So I think that plays a role as well. I think if we could maybe start alternating starts a little bit more here and there between him and Jack, we might actually get him a little more warmed up and be able to actually play competently in net. That was a bit rude, but I didn't really know how to word that. You know what I mean.
I love the hot takes, Scott. We need some hot takes here and there. Never apologize. Our Freddie Anderson lookalike. Any thoughts on Peter Mrazek?
I mean, For me, like I don't like when I look at the signing right now, I don't really like it. But that's also again just because we haven't seen him play much. I mean, it'll look a lot better when we see him play more. And I, like Scott said, like I hope he does play a lot more. I hope they're able to find ways to balance starts just because they don't really want to run Jack Campbell into the ground. They don't
Yeah.
want him like he already misses practices sometimes just for maintenance days. Like I don't know how much farther they want to go with that before they think, oh, let's just put Peter Mrazek in. I think this week, if they're able to get him into one of these two games and we'll be able to see how good he is, that'll work. But like if he doesn't play in one of these two games this week, it's weird. And it's a question of like, why isn't he playing? Because he did play, but like again, like if you do want to run Jack Campbell, that's fine, but you have another goalie there that you're paying a lot of money for. So you might as well get your use out of it.
Totally agree. And you don't want to run into a situation like we have here in Edmonton where Mike Smith's injured. Koskinen's not in the best form he's ever been in. And Stuart Skinner now has COVID. Like you need depth in goaltending as well. And not saying that Peter Mrazek doesn't bring that, but he needs to see the ice. It's just a matter if the Leafs have faith to give him that consistency in between the pipes. Because Jack Campbell's obviously such a star presence and such a consistent presence for the Leafs in net. But, at some point you got to exercise Mrazek. You just have to know what he can bring, because exactly like you said, Nick, it's a big contract there.
And especially with Jack Campbell's contract being up in the air, I know we're going to be discussing it a little bit more a little bit later, but if Mrazek just continues to be inconsistent, his starts are very sporadic. And even in his starts, he won't show enough confidence to say, hey, he is worthy of the player that can give Campbell a little bit of a breather. Then you have to consider who else in the organization can do that. Joseph Woll immediately comes to mind. And then you look at Mrazek and say, what do we do with him? We can't keep him. We have to probably clear his salary so we can make enough room for Campbell. But that's just absolute worst case scenario. I would love to see Mrazek work out because it could really be a great tandem if it works out perfectly.
Well, you know what? Since we're on the topic of goaltending, Scott, you wrote a really good piece on the LeafsNation.com about Jack Campbell's possible next contract and what it could potentially look like. Bottom line, and let's all get into this, can the Leafs afford to keep Jack Campbell?
So like it really depends. Like it's, as I said in the article, it's such a weird situation for as far as like context and evaluating based on like the stats and all that, because or like trying to get a read for the market value for him, I guess, based on all that, because it's just like we don't see too often a goalie play very few NHL games before they turn 29 and then just all of a sudden play like an elite goaltender. Mm-hmm. So and even then, like the last time, the goalie I could find that was probably closest to that was Tim Thomas back when he started playing well for the Bruins, but that was in a whole different era of the cap era. So it's still even then hard to just like go based off of Thomas's contract or something like that. So I tried my best to find a comparable, but really even then, like there's nothing that's like just like Campbell. Like the closest things I could find was Grubauer's contract this year with Seattle, Antti Ranta's contract in 2018 with the Coyotes, and then Carter Hutton's contract with the Buffalo Sabres, which, not the greatest stuff to pull from as far as like how they performed after that as well. Like I tried to pull like just based off numbers, like what kind of contracts you look at. Like taking the whole pool I took, it was only like $3 million for 3 years. As I tried to narrow it down closer and closer to the comparables, it would be like 4.5 for 3 or 4 years. And then eventually the closest I could find was like that actually makes sense based on what we're hearing is $5 million-ish for 4 or 5 years, which if that's the case, bye Mrazek, because I don't think they're going to have 2 goalies locked up beyond next season at $8 million combined, probably closer to 9. And even then it is very risky to sign a goalie in his 30s who has as small of a sample size as Jack does with his elite play to a contract worthy of that play when we don't know how he'll do after.
I think,
Yeah, so I don't know what they're gonna do.
like, if you think about it, if they end up having to trade Peter Mrazek, they either have to go out and find themselves another backup, or they could turn inwards. And I mean, you could take one of Joseph Wool or Shalgren. I mean, it depends. It's like taking a chance. Like, I know what we've saw from Joseph Wool has been both good, and there are some parts of his game that could be better that would make you feel more confident. I would like to see Shalgren get a test, because he seems like he's a very serviceable goaltender in the AHL, and he's pretty young. So, I mean, there's always a good thing there with him, but it's just, you have to ask that question, is if we want to go as far as signing Jack Campbell for long term, then are we comfortable with the goaltending we have? And I don't know that answer. I wish I did.
Yeah.
Typical. Leafs goaltending being a question mark. When have I ever heard that before?
Yeah, like the dream scenario for the Leafs would be if you could convince Campbell to like give him a 5 or 6 million AAV so he gets the money he deserves, but see if you can do it on a 2-year contract. But even then, like, there's no way Campbell does that if he's sane, because this is his chance to make a lot of money. So if he wants to have a lot of money, this is his opportunity to do that. If he really likes being with the Toronto Maple Leafs, he's not going to have a lot of money. And I think another thing I mentioned too is that also kind of throws a wrench into this, is you can't exactly just be like, all right, business decision, bye Jack, because we've seen how much that locker room likes Jack. So like, that's also probably going to cause a lot of problems, unless if you're Kyle Dubas or Sheldon Keefe, that's where you turn to the big four and you're like, okay, well, you're making all this money and you haven't lived up to it up to this point. So that's why we can't keep Campbell.
It's so true. I'm just so curious how it's all going to play out. I know obviously all the Soup fans out there are praying for the best, but I'm very curious to see how Dubas is going to do this and what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, like we talk about, like I've seen like I guess just like numbers people have thrown out there over the years as to like how much each Leaf has been overpaid. And a lot of people usually say like 1 for William, 2 for Austin and Mitch. And hey, that's $5 million that you could have used to sign Jack Campbell. But yeah, it's now all those players are living up to those contracts now, but like you probably could have gotten them cheaper when they were first signed to it.
It'll be interesting. Scott, based on the article you wrote, if you had to make a prediction right now, whether or not Jack Campbell will stay or not, what would you say?
Oh no, goaltending is voodoo. Don't make me do this.
I love when you say that.
I'm gonna say he stays. I think what we've seen with the Riley signing means that they want to keep around the players that they value.
Yeah.
And they seem to highly value Jack Campbell right now. So I think they try and make it work. That probably means Mrazek's gone. Probably means you try and find a place for Richie as well, if he even has trade value at this point. If not, you buy him out. Hull's probably gone. Like, you're going to keep cutting more into that top heaviness of the lineup, but they probably try and make that work.
I would agree with that. And 2 things. 1, because Jack Campbell is having the season that he's having. And 2, you mentioned the locker room. I think it's very rare that you get such a strong, emotional, and like warm presence in the locker room that Jack Campbell brings, and then such a warrior on the ice. I think that they kind of the Leafs hit the jackpot with someone like Jack Campbell. It's just a matter of now his age and consistency, being able to do that again and continuously. That's where I feel like, is the question. I mean, here, Mike Smith's that guy for the Oilers, right? Mike Smith brings that intensity. He's a guy that everyone wants to play for, but I mean, he's father time, it's a scary thing to say it nicely. That's what Mike always tells me. He's like, father time takes no prisoners. So, it's all things considered. You have to weigh everything out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
100%.
You
Yeah,
gotta take that into consideration, like maybe no more than 5 years, if that's even possible.
Absolutely. What do you guys think about Austin Matthews? The one positive that came out of that Coyotes game is that Austin Matthews, our very own Austin Matthews, our star child, made franchise history, scoring in his ninth straight road game, and then obviously continued his streak against the Blues with his 10 straight road game. Wow. Say that 5 times fast. 1 goal away from the NHL record. Do we think he's going to do it again tomorrow night against the Rangers? Predictions.
If we say he's going to do it, he's not going to do it.
Okay, so blink one. I'm kidding. Do we believe in jinxes?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's. Okay, go ahead.
I'll just say he will do it because it's normal to see him score goals, so he will do it. Unless I don't know who's going to be in net, but if it's Georgiev, no chance. He's not doing it.
Well, the Rangers are killing it right now, top 3 team in the league. So who knows? But I would always, with Austin Matthews and his ability to score, I'm not betting against him. Especially, I feel like he's one of those guys who can do well under pressure. So I think he does it, and he sets an NHL record tomorrow night.
Let's just say if he doesn't score, it's because I accidentally picked him in the Tim Hortons picks challenge.
I'm gonna pull a Bob McKenzie classic on this panel and like you know how whenever they're always like, do you think this specific team will win the Stanley Cup? He's always like, I'm gonna go with the field because it's more likely that they win it. I'm gonna go with that here, or sort of an answer, because usually like trying to predict that a player will score in a game, usually they won't do it because it's just like very few players can score in at least 50% of their games. But Matthews is one of those players. So I'm going to say he does it.
I love that, because that was the question I was going to ask, is obviously aside from his shot, what does Austin Matthews have that sets him apart from the competition? And maybe it is the fact that he's someone who can be reliable in a situation like this, that, he's able to not only set a franchise record, but a league record. He's that good.
I'd say that a lot of it just has to do with how well he defends and drives play on top of like his scoring ability. Like we see some players out there who can't really do much else besides put up points, Draisaitl, or even like McDavid, as skilled as he is, it's very obvious that he does it at the expense of his defensive game. And now that's more just because he's kind of realized that there's really no hope with the Oilers defense. So he has to just like go all out on offense just to like try and get some wins. But like Austin is one of those few players that he can just like take over a game. You can throw him up against anybody and he can handle that matchup and probably eat them alive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, like, it is still goal scoring, but like just this different ways he's finding ways to score goals stands out to me most, just because like back when he was injured, that's really when it started. He wasn't using his shot all the time. He was deflecting pucks in, scoring from just outside the crease. I mean, there's so many ways that he does it now. And like I said earlier, it just feels like every game he's scoring a goal. And when he scores a goal, it's not like, oh, Austin Matthews scored a goal. It's just like, oh, he scored again. Like it feels normal in every single game. So, I mean, just the goal scoring abilities and just how he does it is what it is for me.
And it's just every time you watch a game and Austin Matthews scores a goal, it's like, you know what? It's possible he scores a hat trick tonight. Like that's how I feel. Like he's at the peak of his powers right now, and we're watching arguably the greatest goal scorer the Leafs have ever had, maybe the greatest player the Leafs have ever had.
I always think back. So there was this one time where I believe it was NHL All-Star weekend. I was there covering it, and Austin Matthews was about to go in to do an interview with I want to say it was the GQ interview. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And he was outside waiting, and I had a soccer ball because obviously I'm nuts, and what else do I do aside from pet dogs and like play soccer in my free time? So I had one. He was like, hey, you want to do some keep ups? So we were doing keep ups. He beat me. Like he's actually so skilled. Like he's probably one of those guys that whatever he does, he's so freaking athletic that he can like beat you at, you know? So I was just like, okay, so I'm standing across one of the best players in the league, probably I always say Austin has the most lethal shot in the league, and he's kicking my ass in soccer right now. And he's so nice. So I'm always just like, he blows my mind. And every single time we watch the Leafs play, and, you know, I'm sitting beside Mike on the couch. Mike's like, he's not normal. He's also a tank. Like, this guy I feel like he has it all. He's the whole package. And it's been very cool to watch him season to season and to see what he's been doing this year, because exactly the way he started with the injury and whatnot, he's really been, you know, just progressing and improving.
I've always wondered why hockey players are so good at soccer. Like, they're all really good at keep ups. Like, you see them doing, like, before they go out for warm ups, they're always playing with the soccer ball. I'm like, where does that come from?
Honestly, I agree. I see so many videos, and then like even when either all of them in a group, or like there's just one on, like two of them keeping it up back and forth. I'm like, that's not easy. Like, I struggled sometimes doing that as a soccer player. And I think maybe just such good hand-eye coordination, but then also like, how are they so good keeping the ball up with their feet when they don't play soccer? I don't know. These guys they're just athletes. That's what all you can chalk it up to. They're athletes.
I could see, now I say this as someone who has never like professionally played hockey and has only competitively played soccer up until the second grade. So I'm probably not much of an expert here, but like, I feel like the fact that just like the skating and the fact that they do kind of have to focus on their footwork might have something to do with like it converting over to soccer as well. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, all I know is he beat me, and I know that he would absolutely kick my butt in hockey too. So I just took the L, and I went back into the room and started prepping for my next interview.
You know what I'd love to see? A charity soccer game of all NHL players, and let's see how well they would do, and maybe against some like MLS players or something.
I would love that. And you know that they would do well. I remember, again, like it was Pascal Siakam and Pirtle. Remember Pirtle? So it was Siakam and Pirtle that I interviewed, and they were really, really good at soccer too. And I'm just like, I feel like there'd be such a cool series if there was like professional athletes crossing over into each sport. And then there'd be some kind of charity game, because I am very interested, all these athletes who are like super highly athletic, playing soccer. Because again, soccer is not an easy sport. It's the only sport in the world you play with your feet. But for some reason, these guys kill it. So I don't know, just athleticism.
Hear me out. A 3-game series, all the MLSE teams. You have the Leafs versus the Raptors in a soccer game, the Raptors versus the Toronto FC in a hockey game, and the FC versus the Leafs in a basketball game.
Okay, so who's going to make this happen?
We need to see all of the NHL take on Lorenzo Insigne when he comes here.
I'd love that. Oh my God, I'd love to have a soccer podcast. We need to talk to Nation about creating a soccer podcast so I can give all my takes, but that'd be sick. That guy's a player. That's another guy who needs to live up to his contract, because he's getting paid a lot of money to come here to Toronto.
I always see this one video, on my time hop every year. It showed up again like a week ago, and it's this video of, I think, like 3 soccer players from like the like Japanese Olympic team or something like that, playing against 100 school children. And it's just the 3 of them. So it's like 30 kids playing like up front, 30 playing midfield, 30 playing at like defense, and then 10 in net. And it's just the 3 professional soccer players trying to score on the children.
And did they do it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's so
because all the players would just run towards the player with the ball, and then the other 2 would be wide open. I
love it. Oh my God. It's my favorite sport. Okay, that's neither here or there. That'll be one day when we have a soccer podcast to talk about. Nick, you wrote a great article. There's tons of great stuff on the leafsnation.com. If you guys haven't checked it out, please head over to our website, about Sheldon Keefe. And it's interesting because not that I wasn't convinced about Keefe, but maybe while I was watching the All or Nothing docuseries, and maybe last season, I was like, is he the guy that the Leafs need? And at this point in time, I can say that maybe the doubt I had was wrong, because I look at Keefe now and I'm like, I do think that he is the right fit for this team, for these players, and for the guy to be leading the team on the ice and being that guy in that head coach position. You spoke to his mentality and how it could bring the Leafs to another level. what do you think it is about his mentality that is maybe that key to success for this Leafs team?
I think like if you go back and you look at Mike Babcock and the way he coached, and you look at Sheldon Keefe, like one of the differences is that the way Sheldon Keefe talks, he like in the All or Nothing series, you saw a lot of him, like I think it was in the beginning of the season, talking about Stanley Cup habits and just having that main focus, and then never being satisfied. Like if the Leafs have a game where they squeeze out a win, like he might come out after and be like, yeah, we didn't play good. And like he shows that never satisfied mentality. And when like what relates to me most about it is like you see like basketball players like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, those were the two that I put in my article. And you look at them and the way they played games and just how they were in the playoffs, and they may have went up in a series 3-2, and like there might be guys who are cheering and being happy, but they had straight faces because they knew that the job wasn't over, like the job wasn't done. And even Kyle Lowry, like when the Raptors won their championship after they eliminated the Bucks, I think somebody asked him about whether or not he was happy about it, and he's like, I'm not satisfied, we still have another round to go. And I think that's like the best thing you need in professional sports, is somebody to, although there might be some games where you're really happy because you squeezed out a big win, also bringing you down and being like, hey, like, although we won this game, we still have so much work to go. And I think Sheldon Keefe is really good at bringing that message forward. And I mean, I hope the message helps this year with the team, because you'd think it would, just because if it keeps coming from the same person over and over again, it's sort of like I'm thinking about it right now, like a dog. You teach it a trick, like you say things over and over again, and they'll finally learn. And I'm not saying the Leafs are dogs in this situation, but it's like a habit. Like you learn a habit, you do it for a certain amount of time, and things happen, and it starts to get easier. And hopefully that's what happens with the Leafs. And if, like, one of the things I'm thinking right now is if Sheldon Keefe's habits don't work this year, I don't think it would be on Keefe. I think it would be more on the players, because he's instilled everything he can into this team. And it's really, at this point, in my opinion, up to the players to perform and show that they can do this.
Having just finished up All or Nothing last week, finally, I guess I'm a little bit more refreshed on Keefe's mannerisms in the show. And I actually really liked how they kind of, throughout the season, he's just kind of like, hey guys, like this isn't good enough. Like we need to be doing better. It also actually kind of made me hate bringing in Joe Thornton just a little bit more, because I specifically remember one leadership meeting where Keefe is like, all right guys, so like we're winning, but like we need to improve on this. And Thornton's like, what do you like, we're winning, like we don't need to do anything, we just like we're having fun. I'm like,
I had a big problem with that. I didn't like that at all. I love that from Keefe, and I'm like, Joe Thornton, I'm like, man, as one of like the vets on this team, you can't do that.
Not just a vet, one that like just came here this year. Like he does not know how cursed this team is. But like I really think last year, like we've seen it this year so far, where they've just been playing really well consistently and haven't really, aside from a couple little bumps in the road, particularly at the beginning of the season, we haven't really seen them falter too much. And I think a lot of that has to do with last season. Keefe was just instilling that like we need to keep getting better and better. This isn't good enough. And everyone's like, oh no, we're fine, we're dominating this division, we're good. And then they got embarrassed in the first round by the Habs. So I think that really, like, I feel like when you just think like, oh, we're good, and then suddenly the universe is just like, yeah, no, you're not. I think that really wakes you up, and it's like, okay, we need to learn to be better. And I think Keefe is so far looked like the kind of guy that can do that, and maybe that gives us hope for this season.
Basically, all I can say is, because like Nick and Scott, you guys put it perfectly. All I can say is that there was a time at the beginning of Mike Babcock's tenure, like, you know what? Can I envision him as hoisting the cup as the Leaf coach? Maybe. But as time went on, I slowly just like, I can't see it. With Keefe, I can see it. just hope the players can instill those values and like translate those values into results.
There was I loved it in All or Nothing. I forget who the player was for the Leafs because I watched it, right when it came out. When I loved like Sheldon Keefe being so straightforward and kind of harsh at times, because as athletes, if you're not performing, your coach, should tell you that. So he had someone at practice and was like, you have one more chance. And if you don't start performing, like, you're out. But like, also, what do you need from me? He was so good in those moments where he came down on the player, but also let him know that like he's there to help. My at the end of it all, and I think a little jaded from last season, I was like, is Keefe the guy to kind of get them to the next level? But now, especially even seeing, the Leafs come back in that Blues win, I'm like, I feel like a lot of that has to do with Keefe's mentality of exactly that. We need to always get better. And I think that teams and coaches who have that mindset of tunnel vision, like the eye is on the prize of, making the playoffs, making the second round, winning the cup, you're going to get teams that can grind out games like in St. Louis, where they were down against the Blues, and find a way to win. Because I always think that comes from the coach. And I think that in Edmonton right now, we're seeing people are like, oh, it's not all on Tippett. It's not all on the head coach. These players who are getting paid so much money deserve responsibility. And I agree, that's your role as a professional athlete. But there's a head coach for a reason. And it is to instill that mentality, to make sure everything's going well in the locker room, to be creative with your lines, whatever it may be. And I think that Sheldon Keefe has proven to be that guy for the Leafs right now. And every single time I see him frustrated or happy, or giving his take in a post-game conference, in a post-game presser, I have faith in him, which I don't necessarily know if I had that in Babcock. Like, I really want the Leafs to do well almost now for Sheldon Keefe. I want him to be the guy.
So to add to the comment you made about the All or Nothing show, I'm pretty sure that was Jimmy Vesey was the player.
Yes,
Keefe was
maybe.
talking to.
Yeah.
There were a few, there was one, I think, with Dubas and Keefe and Mikheyev, and then also Keefe had some comments about Matthews with something he had said after a game. I remember that was kind of, I think, a very weird thing for them to dramatize in the show. Like, I feel like it wasn't actually as big of a deal as it was, but they're like, oh, we got to find something to do. I will also say, I think, I know a lot of Leafs fans complain about how tough our division is this year, but I actually really like that it is, because one of the biggest problems last year as well, like we talked about Stanley Cup habits, is once the season went along and they pretty much secured their playoff spot, they didn't need to be going all out to win every game. So I think that kind of got them out of the habit. So I think the fact that how close this division is means they're probably not going to figure out where their playoff seed is until the final couple games. And I think that's going to be something that really helps them keep in that kind of playoff mindset going into the playoffs.
Yeah, some motivation. All right, guys, Michael, especially because, again, we talk about articles on the LeafsNation.com. You wrote a great one on Josh Hosang, who has 11 goals, 9 assists on the season so far. What's preventing Hosang right now from an NHL contract? Because he's been doing really well with the Marlies. Obviously, we all know his story. A lot of fans across the league and obviously here in Toronto are rooting for him. But what's kind of that divider right now between him and signing an NHL contract?
Well, obviously the lack of an NHL contract is one big obstacle, but the other one is that the Leafs lineup as it stands right now is pretty loaded at the moment. Yeah. Obviously you look at the depth pieces on there, then there's a bunch of injuries that have been going on left, right, and center. And even if you look at the taxi squad, it's a lot of the higher depth guys in the Leafs depth charts, like Brett Seney, Alex Biega, who's going to be playing for Jake Muzzin tomorrow. So there's just way too many bodies in the way, and the only path forward for Joshua Hosang to make it to the Leafs is if someone like Pierre Engvall, Nick Ritchie, or Kyle Clifford get either sent off somewhere or reassigned to the Toronto Marlies. And the only player that I can feasibly see gets moved out would be Nick Ritchie, because obviously we've been talking about him for weeks and probably months on end, just about how disappointing of a season he's had, to put it in the very mildest of terms. But then again, I think there's a reason why the Leafs keep playing him, in spite of the fact that he hasn't really translated some of his skill set to offensive success. So I'm thinking I would love to see Hosang play because what he's been doing with the Marlies, he's shown that he's worthy and deserving of another chance. And I think the Leafs can definitely give him that opportunity. And he's been definitely grateful for that just based on his production this year. But I don't know if it'll happen this year. I would love for it to happen this year, believe me. But this might be something that happens next year if he's willing to stay in the organization for an entire year and just fine tune his game. But at the same time, there's going to come a point where it's like, okay, I've proven everything that I could possibly prove. I've been a dominant force. I deserve another chance. And if the Leafs are going to give him that chance because they just have too many bodies in the way, then someone else will gladly give him that chance.
So, Nick, because you've interviewed him a couple of times, and from what I've read that you've wrote, he really loves this team that he's on. And obviously we talk about, Mare, when she's on the podcast, she always says that the Leafs are one of the best teams in the league for developing their players. So do you think it's a thing where, maybe if Josh Hosang doesn't go to the Leafs this season, because again, the Leafs are in top form, they don't necessarily, I don't want to say need him, but maybe it's just not the right time. Do you see someone like Josh Hosang staying and waiting for his opportunity because he loves this environment that the Leafs have created for him?
I think, yeah, I think if he was if there was a chance in the off season that he would get offered a contract by the Leafs, I think he would stay. There's parts of me that think that he would there's parts of me that think that he would stay here for the rest of his career. I do think there's other parts of me that believe, like Michael said, if there's not a chance here, there's still other places that he would fit in an NHL lineup. There's teams right now where he would fit in an NHL lineup. To me, he seems like he's good enough to be in the NHL right now. I mean, there's parts of his game that may need to be a little bit better, but overall, he's a solid player. He drives play really well. He's able to bring the puck up the ice. Every time I watch him bring the puck up the ice, he gets it into the defense or the offensive zone. There might be once or twice where you watch him and he doesn't bring it in, but he's usually the one on the Marlies that brings it in, whether it's on the power play or anything else. And just his speed and his deceptiveness is really good. And it's so difficult because you watch him in practice and you see him at the rink. It really seems like he's enjoying himself, and it really seems like he's happy where he is. He's a great guy. And I mean, a lot of people might have different opinions, but that's just because they might not know him that well. But I mean, if there's a chance for him to stay, I'm sure 100%, I'm positive he would take it.
And he's not limited to Toronto, right? When I say this, I don't want to seem like Toronto's the only place that this can happen for him, but I think he's seeing so much success because of, again, this space that the Marlies and the Toronto Maple Leafs organization has allowed him, has created for him and allowed him to be himself and to feel, quote unquote safe, and to really, he's gone through his journey in the NHL. He took a couple steps back, but he is now doing what he's doing best. And if he's feeling happy, which is the bottom line, what a player should be feeling, he's playing well, and hopefully he gets that chance with the Leafs, because I would love to see it. And Nick, I really hope you get that post-game interview when it happens. I would love to see it. But obviously it's a thing for me where maybe he stays, maybe he sees, what next season's like and progresses into it. But he's in a happy environment. He's finding success in that environment. And I think timing is everything. So the day when he gets the call up, because we know it's going to happen, it'll be the right time for him to wear that Toronto Maple Leafs jersey.
Do you want to go ahead, Scott, or do you want me to go first?
One thing I was going to add too, with Caroline mentioning about whether or not that future is in Toronto, I wonder if he looks at someone like Alex Galchenyuk, who you could say is a comparable for him for what the Leafs did with him last year to redevelop him, and see the fact that he currently has 4 assists in 17 games with the Coyotes and has struggled to stay in the lineup, and probably say, hey, maybe I should stay with the team that's giving me this opportunity, because the year before, once Galchenyuk worked his way through the minors and came up to the Leafs, they gave him a pretty consistent role on that second line with Tavares and Nylander, and he got 12 points in 26 games out of it. So I think like he's probably not going to get that this year just with all the depth options, but looking at players who they have coming up on contracts, Mikheyev's a UFA, Hosang could be a decent replacement for him without having to look externally or pay a bunch of money for it. Engvall is an RFA. We don't know if he's the kind of player the Leafs will bring back, although I kind of hope they do because he's actually done a pretty good job at holding the fort on that shutdown line as well with Kampf. Spezza, we don't know if he'll be back next year. Like retirement's always an option for him. Even you look at some of the players the Leafs have cycled in, Brett Seney, Kyle Clifford, they're all UFAs too. We don't know if Nick Ritchie's going to be back next year based on his play this year. There's a lot of opportunities for him to fit in that lineup next year and do it seamlessly, whether that be he gets a Galchenyuk opportunity and plays alongside one of the big four, or he just plays on the fourth line and just crushes against weak competition.
100%. I'm pretty sure if my cap knowledge is pretty well at this point right now, I think any team is able to offer him a contract since he is on an AHL contract. So, I mean, I don't like if a team was to offer him something, I don't see him leaving just because of the team and everything that he's been through and how much he's said he's liked it here. But there is still that opportunity for him if he was, and you never know. Like there's still an opportunity for him to go to the Olympics. I don't know if Team Canada is going to pick him, but I know he was on the long list. So that's also another opportunity to show how good he is. I was going to say on best, but it's not a best on best anymore. So
best on best available.
Yeah.
That's good.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many avenues for him to go down that he could showcase his skill. I think the Olympics would be a very good one just to show on the world stage. But I would say if he goes anywhere in the next year, I think it's still Toronto.
Yeah.
And just to add to Scott's point about the fourth line, even if that's the only place that Hosang can get on this year, best case scenario, he gets an NHL contract. That's still a great place for him because, Spezza and Simmons have been a pretty effective pairing on the fourth line, but have never really had that consistent partner that can get the puck up the ice, move it in transition, and just help start the attack. And Hosang could be an excellent candidate in that regard.
Yeah.
And just one thing that we say about this Leaf team is that yes, they have four amazing players at the top of their food chain, but who's going to be the next man up when the stars go quiet? And you need to have as much depth options as you possibly can to help fill that void. And just having a guy like Hosang, who's been offensively gifted for his entire career, it's always worth the gamble. So I always say best case scenario, he could get it this year, but realistically, he'll probably be there next year and beyond.
I will say one more thing. When you said if the four players aren't playing well, Josh Hosang is a guy, he loves the spotlight, he loves scoring big goals, so it would be nice to see him on there. And another thing is I didn't know before when he was younger, but he was compared to Connor McDavid. He was that good. And I don't want to say I see I do see the comparables in some sense just by the way he's able to carry the puck up the ice and everything. But I did not know that, and that's a fun fact.
All right, guys. Awesome. Go ahead.
Are you saying that Josh Hosang is better than Connor McDavid?
You never know. He shovels his driveway, probably.
I do think having more scoring punch like that in the playoffs could be nice, because we saw last year, once you lose one of those big four, it's a lot easier to shut down the rest of them, which is, again, why I'm so mad that they did not go after Taylor Hall at the trade deadline, because I feel like Montreal would take a second line of Hall and Nylander a lot more seriously than what they were throwing out most nights. As great as Nylander was in that playoff series, he was all on his own.
Next game up for the Toronto Maple Leafs, we mentioned it earlier in the podcast, the New York Rangers. What's one key, quickly before we head off, what's one key to the game that the Leafs need to bring to beat this Rangers team who are buzzing right now?
Score on the goaltender. Because it's either Shesterkin who's in net, who's been very, very good this season, or it's Georgiev, who also loves playing the Leafs because he goalies them every single time. So that's mine. Score.
Love it.
And fast.
If you want to go first, Michael.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to add to Nick's point, like these last two games between the Rangers and Leafs have been pretty low-scoring affairs, like 2-1 games. One of them was a 2-1 game in overtime, and the other one, I think Morgan Riley had one, maybe two goals. So I think this is probably another scenario where it could be either a tight affair, where very defensive, or it could just be an offensive explosion. Like who knows? So you need to get offensive chances because the Rangers could bite you in so many ways. Like similar to the Leafs, these two teams are pretty well match up pretty well. So it should be a pretty fun game to watch.
So I'm going to dispute that point with a hot take because I'm going to come out here and say that the Rangers are frauds. They are the third worst possession team and the ninth worst expected goal share. So obviously they have like some really good pieces. Like Adam Fox is an amazing defenseman. Yeah. Zibanejad is really broken out as a elite first line center. Panarin is, you don't really need to say anything. Shesterkin has also really established himself as an elite goaltender. They have those pieces, but the rest of the lineup sucks ass.
So Scott, in other ways, is trying to say that the Leafs can really expose a few areas on this Rangers roster.
Yes, and you can find out specifically on my Know Your Enemy article tomorrow.
Love the plug. Love the plug. My key to the game is get Austin Matthews the puck because he's going to keep this this road game scoring streak going. So I just have a good feeling about it. So give Austin Matthews the puck and watch magic happen. All right. We want to go on to our song?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. Michael, since you're highlighted on my screen, you start us off.
Well, The Weeknd's new album came out fairly recently. And as soon as I heard the song Sacrifice, like I instantly fell in love with it. I played it on repeat nonstop. And it's probably going to be one of my favorite songs of this year. Like if I were to make a playlist for the best songs of 2022, it's probably going to be on that playlist. So that's going to be my pick for this week.
Love it.
I'm gonna go with another Weeknd song off
Nice.
Dawn FM. I'm gonna go with Here We Go Again with him and Tyler the Creator.
Okay.
Just because it's amazing.
I have to listen to the album. I haven't listened. I'm not the biggest Weeknd fan, but I'll listen to the album.
It's really good.
Okay.
Like it kind of gives like an old school vibe of like old radio.
Okay.
Which is very like I feel like it's just unique in its own way. And I really like, I know the last Weeknd album that he came out with, I wasn't really a fan of, but this one, like I can play it on repeat and it feels like you're listening to a real radio station.
Okay. I'm going to check it out. I promise.
Yeah, I love that album for the experience. I think he could have dove a little bit deeper into like the lyrical depth that he kept trying to like tease that he was going to with like some of the earlier songs in the album. But yeah, like it's still a really enjoyable Weeknd album. A lot of bops. I'm not going to take a song from there though as one of my songs of the week, because I will not follow trends. I am a hipster at heart. I'm going to go with a bit of an older song, and by that I mean song released in the 2000s. "The Catalyst" by Linkin Park.
I love Linkin Park.
It's one of their, it's a single, so I can't really say it's underrated because like just by nature it's get exposed more than like some deep cuts on the album. But as far as singles go, I think it's a very underrated song from them, and it just like really pumps me up the way it just like slowly builds the hype up over the last like 5 minutes. And I'm also a sucker for like really good harmonies in a song, and just the last 2 minutes with the harmonies is just like some of the best I've ever heard in music.
Okay, great. I'm excited to listen to all of these. Although I love Linkin Park, I know exactly what you're talking about. Mine, everyone's heard "Hide and Seek" by Imogen Heap. There are weeks in my life where this song is like on repeat, and I don't know what it is. It's just a masterpiece of a song where you experience like 16 different emotions at the same time. So I feel like every playlist needs an Imogen Heap song. So that's my ad. That's my addition this week.
I don't think I've ever heard that song.
What?
You definitely have.
You have.
You just don't know.
How does it go?
I can't say.
Have you seen the like Dear Sister SNL sketch?
No.
Yes.
It's that song.
It's like the what you said. I am toned down.
But not the Jason Derulo.
Yeah, no, it's not Jason Derulo.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever listened to that song, but
Oh my God, please, you need to listen to it start to finish and like let it be an experience. Don't do it while you're doing something. Just like sit and listen to it.
Okay. It has 108 million plays on Spotify.
It's
so
an unreal song.
And all the songs are already on the playlist.
Yay! Oh, Scott, you're the best. Okay, Kyle, if you're listening, we missed you, buddy.
No, we don't.
We'll see you next week. As for now, this has been episode 19 of the Leafs Nation Radio podcast. It's always a pleasure, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode.